Well, hello and welcome to the Light Reading Podcast. I'm Jeff Baumgartner, a senior editor at Light Reading.
Hello, I am Misty Duckworth. I am with BSP as a project director. I bring over 23 years of experience in the telecommunications and data center industry. And along with me is my partner, Randy, and I'll turn it over to him.
Hi, I am Randy Kinsey. I am a project director of the BSP as well, and I've got about 40 experience in the telecom industry with a combination of both military and the civilian sector.
Great. Well, thank you both for joining the podcast. Today we're going to immerse ourselves in the world of the data center and how BSP is connecting to that world. So, I think data centers are a pretty coveted asset, particularly amid all the hype and circumstance around AI and some of the concerns about future powering needs. On the powering side, I was trying to catch myself up on the data center, and I think it was the CEO of DigitalBridge put out this warning that data centers could be at a power deficit in the next 18 to 24 months. And then there's always this M&A activity kind of swirling around the market. So, but before we dig into the data center arena and kind of how BSP is connected in there, I would just like to ask one of you just to remind everybody, who BSP is and generally what you focus on. So I don't know, Randy or Misty, either of you can take that one.
I can take that one. So BSP has been around for about 7 years. We're primarily a technical due diligence company that's what we focus on, is technical due diligence. We focus on both service providers and investors, and we initially started out on the network side, really focusing on network. One of the things we like to say is all of our members in the group have got that operational experience. We've all like to say, we've been there, done that kind of thing. We've really focused on the network side, heavily on fiber, coax, copper, as well as fixed wireless. And recently, as you've mentioned, as you've seen, the data center space is really starting to explode, and we've had a combination of us seeing that explosion in the market, as well as some of our former clients coming back to us and saying, "Hey, can you help us out in the data center space?" I have data center experience from my time at Charter, and then Misty had joined us as well, and she also brings data center experience from her time at Time Warner, as well as others. And so we're seeing obviously a lot of growth in that space, and so it made sense for us to start focusing on that area as well.
Right. Interesting. So is the data center side, is that like a kind of subset of the business there, or is it just like in addition to everything you're already doing? Or, Randy, you and Misty, are you both like really fixated on the data center right now? Or is it just as projects come up, you jump in?
It's coming up as an addition to, right, or in combination with. So we're still doing the network space as well, but the business is really picking up on the data center side. So much so that beyond myself and Misty, we've also just added another member to the team, Kim Morrow, who joins us with a lot of experience from the data center space as well. And so so we're seeing that it's about a balance right now in the business that we're doing, both on the network and the data center side.
Yeah. And before we kind of talk about the drivers, what's going on, I mean, how much of your attention now is given to the data center side versus the other parts of the business? I mean, it sounds like it's a growing area, but if you broke it down, is it like kind of a small portion still, or is it pretty big?
I wouldn't say it's 50-50 at this point. Misty might be closer on the actual number or have that specific number, but it's definitely growing. And most of all of my recent projects have all been data center related, as well as, like I said, we just brought on Kim Morrow, who's 100% focused on data center space, and Misty, she's sort of bridging between both sides right now.
Right. So I'll add to that, Randy, and say that since I have been on board with BSP, I think I worked on one fiber project, which was the primary business for BSP. And since then, all of the projects I worked on has been data centers. So I would say it's becoming a 50-50 split between the business.
Okay, great. Okay. And Randy had mentioned there was an explosion happening. So like what's in the explosion, right? Are you seeing, and Missy, you too, I mean, are you seeing like a major uptick in M&A activity or the need for, due diligence in the data center arena? I just want to try to get a read on it, in terms of what's really been the focus.
Yeah, most definitely. The uptick is mainly around retrofitting and expansions in the brownfield area for data centers. And then also greenfield AI focused hyperscalers, of course, they're really hot and heavy. As far as the M&A side, though, we are seeing a lot of the brownfield, the investors asking about, hey, can we add liquid cooling to this existing facility? And how much is that going to cost us? And what does it entail? So, all of the technical and operations due diligence has never been more important.
I see. And when you're talking like brownfield, greenfield, so are we talking about like, hey, how do we update, the existing data centers, or what do we need to do if we're going to build a new one? Is that kind of the
Absolutely.
the
It's both. It's
focus?
a combination of both. Yeah, it's a combination of both. Like Misty said, we've got clients who are looking at brownfield installations, data centers that already exist, and are looking how they do the updates and the upgrades to leverage and build and bring in AI type customers that are obviously coming to the table with much higher power demands and cooling demands, as well as we're seeing investors that are investing in new startups and new greenfield builds that are from the ground up, brand new data centers that are 100% focused on supporting AI type loads.
That's right.
Okay, interesting. Now, are you also helping to kind of gauge the value of some of these assets? In terms of kind of the M&A side, if you've got a company that's like, well, there's a data center that's on the block or something like that, where you have to kind of evaluate and do the due diligence on that, or is it really the other two areas that you're talking about that's the
We
big
really
focus? Yeah.
we really focus on just the technical due diligence aspects of it. So it's in a lot of cases it's a combination of, in some cases for some of our clients and some of our investors, it's some of their first time they're getting in the data center space. So there's an educational component for us to helping them understand what's important from a technical aspect of a data center and all the things that go into a data center and why you have to worry about certain things. We tend not to get too much into the commercial side. We very seldom touch on the commercial side and getting into the true value, other than understanding the cost for operating it, the cost for upgrading it or building it or maintaining it. We get into those costs from that angle, but not from a valuation of the asset angle.
Okay, and those that are maybe looking to get into a data center for the first time, what's kind of the driver for those folks? If maybe they don't have like data center assets and they think that they need some. I mean, what kind of company and kind of what's the motivator for some of that?
Well, I think in most cases, and obviously not being a technical guy and engineer, not my forte to focus on the business side, but obviously most of them are looking at great big opportunities, right? Explosion data center. The data centers were pretty much until the AI explosion, data centers were data centers, right? And now with AI, there's just so much activity going on in that space as everyone is scrambling to find power, to find that space where it has power, it has cooling. And so you see a lot of investment in all the brownfield, like Misty mentioned, data centers that are looking to do the upgrades and do the renovations that allow them to support AI loads, as well as you have AI operators that are looking for places to put these things and places to power them, and then of course the greenfields. So there's a lot of activity going on in this space, and a lot of people want obviously to be involved in and invest in it.
Yeah, I'll add to that, Jeff, and say that data centers were not typically looked at as a really good revenue generating business. And now with AI coming on board and is here, that investors are looking at the data centers as a revenue generating um, asset.
I see. And what, for those that kind of look at it that way, right? We're talking a lot about AI here. Is there a lot of, let's talk first in the brownfield scenario, to support AI applications and processing. does it typically involve, a lot of upgrades, that they have to look at, whether it's for, compute or cooling? I mean, I'm sure it's all of the above, but, kind of what do they have to worry about if they're going to get into that business with an existing data center?
So that's
The
part of our due
Go
diligence. And
ahead, Misty. I'm sorry.
I'll turn it over to you, Randy. And I'll just start it by saying that's part of our due diligence. We go into the data centers and do a full technical assessment to see what they have currently, how they're operating currently, and what do they need to prepare for what's coming if they want to go that route. So with that full due diligence, with the full technical assessment, even looking into their operations, their staff, and making sure that they are uh, fairly up to par on the new technologies, we look at that. So with that said, Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, it's pretty much just everything that Misty said. As we look at the brownfield, one of the things we like to see or like to say is we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, and the things we wish we'd never seen, kind of thing.
Yeah.
As you get into different data centers, every data center has been built different in the past, and so we start to do that assessment to understand what is it going to take for them to increase their density from a power and cooling perspective, and then how far do they have to go, and so that really primarily focuses on power and cooling, right? And in a lot of cases, the operators that are looking to approach this space, they either have the available power or they have some available power that they feel like they can sell to AI clients, and then they have to look at what do they have to do from a cooling perspective to increase their cooling, just because the density has gone up so much for AI, and the density in that space and the cooling requirements in that space have gone far beyond what they've considered when that space was originally created and constructed and designed. And so we have to look at that and give them a sense of what their plan. In a lot of cases, they've already got their plans, and we're going in there to look at, does this make sense? Is this going to work? Is this going to be operable for them? With the operation side being a big component of that as well. Is it's easy to say, I'm going to throw some more power in here. I'm going to throw a couple more generators, some more batteries for UPSs. I'm going to throw some more cooling at it. Yay, I'm done. It's like, well, there's a bigger component to going to how you operate it as well, right? At the same time, and that's a big piece of it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Missy, I think up front you talked a little bit about liquid cooling, right, becoming a big point of interest. Now, for people like me who don't really, I don't really follow the data center business as closely as other parts of the industry that I do focus on. But what's the quick or the quick description of what liquid cooling is versus like traditional methods that a data center would use?
I'm going to say, in a nutshell, it is simply put, another way to remove heat from data centers. So air cooling has been a traditional way. Liquid cooling is now emerging and evolving. It's from immersion to direct to chip to rear door liquid cooling. There's several technologies out there that data centers are starting to adopt. The issue is, if it is a brownfield data center that is looking into liquid cooling, they need to start assessing how are they going to start, retrofitting their plumbing systems. How are they going to provide leak detection for these systems? Because traditional leak detection is not going to cut it for the liquid cooling. So with that in a nutshell, that's my version of it. Randy can go into the deeper technologies of it from that perspective.
Yeah, if you look at Jeff, if you look at traditional, like Misty said, traditional cooling methods primarily were just forced air components and a couple different ways you could deliver cold air and remove heat from data centers. With the power densities going up so high for AI, and to give you an example, the data center I designed, we targeted 8 to 10,000 watts per rack, and now we're looking at things of like 200,000 watts per rack. That's a lot of power consumption that results in a lot of heat generation. And so you see that path of, okay, well, first we do forced air cooling. We're just pushing cold air around and try to contain it, which is more of a passive approach. Let's keep the cold air in a certain place and get it right into the racks of equipment, to then, like what Misty mentioned, a little more closer to the units is like some backdoor cooling. So the back of rack, we've got fans and chillers basically bolted onto the back of the rack, and then all the way to direct to chip, where they're actually running coolant through special manifolds that are bolted directly to the GPU chips to get the heat out of them. That seems to be where most of the industry seems to be leaning. There are other technologies like full immersion, where they completely submerge the cards into some sort of coolant. We don't see that happening as much. That comes with a lot of other problems. For the most part, it looks like the industry. I don't know that it's nailed down that direct-to-chip cooling is the way that's going. It's the way NVIDIA is cooling a lot of their stuff, and it seems to be the way the industry is headed right now. But then, like she said, it introduces a lot of more plumbing to the data center and the data room floor that we've traditionally not had there, which brings a whole, like we mentioned earlier, brings a whole nother operational challenge of understanding. As before, you might have had crack units, big computer room air conditioner that literally sat outside the data hall and just pumped their cold air in. Now we're running coolant lines and everything right to the rack, to every rack, and you've got manifolds in there. You've got hundreds, if not thousands, of now connections, all possible leak points. So you have to have leak detection going on there. And like Misty said, you have to have an operations team that understands all that and isn't on top of it to deal with it. Not if it leaks, but when it leaks and when you have a problem, to be able to manage through all that and understand what's going on.
Yeah, because this is still pretty relatively new and emerging, right? It's not like you've got a lot of people who are experts in liquid cooling. I guess probably have a lot of people who are trying to become experts in a big hurry to be able to support that kind of technology in the data center.
Yeah, it's interesting in one regard. Liquid cooling has been around for quite some time. I remember long ago in my Air Force days, we had an old IBM computer that was actually liquid cooled. It was sort of fascinating, the thought of having liquid running to a computer in the middle of the computer room floor back in the day, and that sort of went away. And now it's sort of coming back with the intense amount of concentration of power and heat generation in such a small space, and that just seems to be about the most effective way to get rid of that heat is direct-to-chip type cooling.
Yeah, because now you have a new demand for it. Yeah. Okay. Right. Interesting.
And there's not a lot of standards in that space. So there's a lot of standards being developed amongst all the competing vendors that provide those solutions. And so I think everyone's trying to figure out what's the best answer, what's the smartest answer in that space. How do we do this? How do we generate new processes and procedures to manage all this? And so that's a big part of what we do is doing that research and understanding that and trying to bring that all together and helping our investors and our clients, the investors and our clients, understand what that all means as they get into this space.
Yeah, and is it a lot more difficult if you're trying to retrofit to support liquid cooling? You mentioned we talked a little bit about all the updates in the plumbing. I imagine it's a lot easier if you're starting from scratch to support this versus trying to add it to an existing facility. Is it a pretty big lift in the brownfield world?
I think it's fair to say it's obviously easier to do in a greenfield scenario where you can design it in from day one. I think in the brownfield scenario, it's going to vary by facility. Some facilities are going to be, just because of the way they were built, by coincidence or happy accident, they can easily accommodate it. And there's going to be others that it's a major uplift renovation to add all this additional cooling. And then if you're, whether it's new cooling you're introducing or you're adding on to your additional cooling, then you get back into how was that structured before? How well was it maintained? We saw a client that they had a cooling system that they were adding on to cool a new AI installation, and only to find out half of their coolant pipes had been clogged because previous operators had neglected the system. And so now they had to go back and sort of do a lot of cleanup to fix it and prepare it for the new system. So you get into a lot of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And part of the assessments that we do, we look at, can you expand? Do you have the space to actually build the new plumbing that you need versus doing the uplift and the retrofitting? So we look at different spaces in data centers. Sometimes they have storages that can be converted into another data hall where they don't have to do such a heavy lift.
Okay. All right. So it kind of varies by the situation for sure. Have you come up in situations where they wanted to do something like this and it's like, well, you just don't have the space and power to do it? Does that come up a lot, or is that kind of a rarity? Is there always a way, to kind of get around the hurdle?
There's
Go
always
ahead.
a way.
There's always a way. There's always a way if you want to spend the money, right?
Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Money will handle anything. There you go. If you need more space, you buy more land. Just buy out the person next to you. Okay. Now, obviously, yeah, cooling power seems like the top priorities here, and a lot of the future needs, current demands, future demands of the data center. What are some other big challenges kind of in the market that's being faced in the data center arena, whether it's for AI or anything else? Anything else kind of bubble to the top?
Top of mind for me would be the operations piece of it, your staffing, your software, predictive analysis. A lot of times, older data centers, brownfield in particular, have not invested in the proper software to do predictive analysis to see where they can go. And I see that as needing more attention in the area of data centers.
Okay, yeah, kind of getting everybody up to speed. Okay, and then the other thing I was looking at some of the on the website, looking at some of the processes that you go through on the data center. Like there's like this phase one, you ask a lot of questions about the fuller ecosystem, covering areas like the physical facility, cooling, power, infrastructure, fire suppression, cabling infrastructure, right? That's a lot of area to cover. But what do you think needs the most TLC? When you kind of look at all those, or like kind of what's the big problem child? I'm guessing power and cooling are right up there, but maybe it's just a variation on the question.
Go ahead, Misty, take that one. And I'll add on.
The most TLC, and Randy and I talked about this quite a bit, is still cooling and power, because those are the two that piggyback off of each other, and those are the two that get the most attention right now because of the different constraints. So I would say TLC, power and cooling, hands down. The other one that probably is not such a problem child would be around like your common housekeeping items such as fire detection and suppression. That's just typical. You're going to need that. Other things like just making sure your data center is clean, the white glove cleaning of your data center. All those things get kind of just thrown into the mix as common housekeeping.
Yeah. How about security? I was thinking about that too. There's so much critical activity happening at the data center now. Is security something that you look into, or is that like for a different type of expertise to focus on that?
We do look at the security aspect of it as part of our questionnaire, as well as understanding their physical security as well as their cyber security. We don't necessarily do deep dives into those aspects unless the client's looking for it. And in those cases, we might bring in an outside third party to help us with a deeper dive into, absolute physical security and the construction of barriers and whatnot, and what they should be for the standards that exist for that, as well as a deep dive into cybersecurity from those perspectives. In a lot of cases, cybersecurity isn't that big of a deal because in a lot of cases, the client has their own systems, they have those set there, and they have their own connectivity. But
right. I'm also thinking like physical security. Yeah, like the physical security of the facility. Yeah, I guess too. Okay.
And anytime we do a site visit, we're always assessing that, right? It's like, how difficult was it for us to just arrive there to do the site assessment? How difficult was it for us to get in? Were they expecting us, that kind of thing? And once we're in, how easy are we able to move around inside the facility? What are we looking at? What are we seeing? What are the security? Are they using biometrics? Are there cameras, everything? Are the cameras monitored? As well as like the operational and the housekeeping, as Misty mentioned. What are we seeing on the floor? If it's a colo, what do they allow their tenants to do on the floor? What don't they allow them to do? What do they expect to do for themselves? Can a tenant just bring anything on the floor? Is there cardboard or those kinds of things, which ties back into that operational aspect. And as the AI clients get, like I said, just the complexity of the AI models, the density of power, the density of cooling, the liquid cooling, that operational demand goes up. And you've got to have teams that are on top of it and understand what's going on, whether they're supporting themselves if they're their own internal customers, or whether they have tenants and clients, understanding how they approach those things. Do they have smart hands type operations? Can a tenant call in and say, I need you to go to this cage and do this, and how do they track that, and how do they know all that kind of things going on?
Okay, great. And a final thing, we're over halfway through the year, but what are your top priorities in this part of the industry for the rest of the year? Or any predictions on what the market might look like a year from now? And I think on the priorities, I don't know, I'm kind of thinking you have to kind of continue your education on the topic, and kind of stay up to speed on what's happening in that market and some of the technological change that the market's seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always, like I said, we've just added Kim to our team, who brings a lot of recent experience in the data center space, and Misty, Kim and myself, we spend a lot of time staying up to speed on what's going on in the data center space as connected as we can, as well as through projects that we work on, understanding what those clients are doing. And our goals, for as we continue to 2025, is hopefully to continue to exceed our clients' expectations. As I mentioned earlier, we want to educate our clients. We especially the newer ones entering the data center market, and even on the network side, we go through that as well sometimes. When we work on the network side with clients that don't have as much experience in that space, is to help educate them. We want to continue to grow our space, our projects in the data center space, and we want to expand our business outside of North America, primarily Latin America and Europe, as we can.
Okay.
I don't know if there's anything to add to that one.
Yeah, Misty, any last words? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the things that Randy just said, and honestly, there's never been a more exciting time to be in the industry. There's just a lot of movement going on, and it's exciting to see where it's going to go between the hyperscalers building new or the brownfields that are trying to retrofit. It's just going to be an exciting time.
Okay. Well, great. Well, I think that's where we're going to leave it for today. So Misty and Randy, thanks so much for coming on the podcast and helping to get our bearings on what's going on in the data center world. So looking forward to staying in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good. Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.